Yes.
Okay, so I'm here to address my opponent's major claim that beauty pageants have a negative effect on women and children in our society, as well as the secondary claims made to support this, such as beauty pageants have set an unrealistic standard for beauty, they force children to grow up too quickly, and that many children are unprepared for beauty pageants. First, I want to address one problem I have with the major claim itself. How it's said, or at least written down here, is that it mentions the negative effects on women and children, yet most of the secondary claims, as well as all the sources, do not really talk about the effects on adult 18 and over women. Instead, it mainly focuses on girls under the age of 18, as well as specifically children's beauty pageants, not adult beauty pageants or any of that. So it really is, the major claim really is talking about the effects children's beauty pageants will have on young girls rather than women and children. There's a little bit of addressing, there's a little bit of addressing women, but none of the sources really support the effects of the adults, just the children. So, let's see. Let's address the negative effects. Beauty pageants set an unrealistic standard for beauty. Let's see. In her claim to say the negative effects on setting an unrealistic standard for beauty, she mentions that it creates an unsatisfied. No, sorry, wait. Maybe we word that. It makes women and children that participate in beauty pageants become unsatisfied with their body image, saying that this causes effects such as eating disorders, depression, and low self-esteem. She does address this, but her sources don't entirely support a lot of this. I could not find anything in her sources that really talked in detail about the eating disorders or self-esteem per se. And one of her sources did address the rate of depression amongst participants, but it says about 6% of participants are seen with signs of depression, which, going into other my own research on the rate of depression amongst youth under the age of 18, I found that the percentage, like nationally, is around 5% to 8%, kind of varies from source to source. So a 6% would be within that range. So not sure if the beauty pageant really have an effect there, or if that's just normal. Let's see. She also addresses that it makes women and children believe that they could only be solely judged on their looks and no matter other characteristics, which could be, it's a little unfounded, since beauty pageants aren't made entirely based off of participants' looks. There are like sections to showcase skills and talents, and saying that creates an effect that they could only grow up to believe that beauty is only their beauty really matters isn't really supported by any of her sources. Some of them do discuss that, but these are the sources are kind of unsure whether you could really qualify them as worthy sources, since one that addressed it on a blog spot, and I could not find much research on how the individual who made that, how official that is. So I'm not sure about that. Then I should hurry up more. Let's see. Her second and third claim, which are on children growing up too quickly and they're not prepared, kind of blend together, so I will kind of address them at the same time. And that is, let's see. It says that they are, so it says that they aren't able to, they are forced to grow up too quickly and they're not prepared. And that beauty pageants kind of blamed for that, which is not necessarily the case. A lot of sources I say do not find a exact sort of correlation there or a causation, as much as a relation with type of parents who are attracted to sending their children to beauty pageants, that they tend to be the type of people who would want to send their kids off to participate in these type of events, the ones that will be more willing to pressure them towards achieving these sort of requirements. And let's see, what else is it gonna address? But yeah, so not much. It's not necessarily that beauty pageants are a negative effect on them. It could just be that their parents, who would just be attracted to sending their kids out, would be the problem. So saying beauty pageants have a negative effect would not necessarily be true. It's really unfounded. And I don't have much else to say from there.
So do
It's like that. Everyone's very important. Good evening. I was maybe it doesn't
All right, Gabriel, you started labeling the main and secondary points pretty well. You've got a general criticism of the main proposition, suggesting that the proposition includes issues that are not supported by the supporting information, because it suggests that adults have the same kinds of problems, and you're saying most of the evidence that the advocate presents focuses on children. So that's a reasonable point. I think it might be a good idea to point that out specifically in the subpoints as you get to them also. So you've set that up at the beginning of the speech. You should probably make reference back to it as you go through this. Your labeling on the points was a little confusing. I think sometimes when you're making the transition to the individual points, you hesitate, you're a little bit uncertain about either which point you're going to go to or what you're going to say on those particular points, and that's something that I think requires a little bit more confidence. And even if you have to fake the confidence, sometimes it might be a good idea. Just you need to start making some declarative claims instead of just describing and summarizing the arguments on the other side. The body image issue, for instance, you summarized reasonably quickly by suggesting that they mention eating disorders, depression, and a variety of other issues. And then you say that their evidence doesn't really support any of those points. And I thought that that's a good response, except you don't really refer to any of the evidence that they cited. In other words, what expert did they cite, and did it not mention those kinds of things in it? That would be fine. You don't really have any counter evidence. However, I thought that the best argument that you had on this point was the suggestion that the one thing that they did provide some information on was depression. And then you did some research to suggest that the level of depression of people who participate in these pageants is not substantially different. In fact, it's right in the normative range. Depression can be normative, right in the normative range of what teenagers have. I do think that you need a source citation for that average that you had, 5 to 8%. I know that came from somewhere. I hope that you didn't just pull that out of your hat, and hope that it was accurate. I assume that you did some research there. If that's true, then I think that that's a really excellent response to that particular point. When you move on to the next point, I think you do want to do the numerical labeling so that we know that that's where you are. You're suggesting that the pageants actually have other issues that they make decisions on rather than just beauty, but that's mostly an assertion on your part. You don't diminish the beauty component of the pageants very much by suggesting that they might have skills-based elements to it as well. Maybe some examples would be helpful here, illustrations about how significant the skills-based issues are in the evaluation of the pageants. I don't know how they break it down when they're in the actual competition. You know, maybe 50% is on the appearance in their different outfits, and then 50% is on interview and talent. I don't know. If you had that information, I think it would make your argument a little bit stronger here. As it is, it's mostly an assertion on your point. And then you've got a slight criticism of the fact that they cited a blog site without necessarily telling us what's wrong with that blog site. Doesn't mean that that's not a good challenge to make, but it would be a stronger challenge if you had a criticism there. And then on the last point, I think you've got a very good idea here that the source of these kids' problems is probably the parents rather than the pageants themselves. Now you just need a little bit of evidence to back it up. I thought that was a good press to make, but it needs to be documented to some degree. All right, thank you.